outside of the purview of those in power. No matter the circumstance, those in a higher position can, will, and have justified their actions in different ways. Some reasons are fine, some are weak, but what sort of justification is there for those in the highest position? You have the floor.
Howdy y'all, and welcome to another annual build spotlight, the Aeropaladin. We'll get to the name later, but this video will be closer to a review of Ascendancy generally, offering different build compositions and strategy. Firstly, I have to say, this is pretty much my dream weapon. Real ones remember when Uppercut got nerfed so that Fireworks and Comet procced over the course of 1 second and got cancelled on recast. Before that, my absolute favorite build was Fallen Bmonk with a upper charge cycle. It did so much damage, was simple to play, and was safe. Real ones also remember Rage Hero, I think my first real innovative build. Ascendancy is the creme de la creme iteration of all three of my favorite builds. The third, of course, being Bmonk. Let's get on to the build options. For helmets, you have Shattered Aurora or Cancer. I'll pretty much always suggest Shattered Aurora over Cancer. More damage, and you still get some HP sustain from healing efficiency. Cancer has lower damage, but higher EHP and sustain, of course, depending on your spell cycle. For chestplate, Fidelius or Firebird. I think here Fidelius is the best choice, especially after the Ascendancy nerf. It just has better stats in every regard, though Firebird has some edge cases where it can out-heal Fidelius, especially if you're constantly in the red. I will say, War-Torn Palace also has a buff that gives you the Firebird major idea, so that's a consideration too. For leggings, we have Champion's Valence or Eden Blessed Guards. Champion gives more EHP and damage, Eden gives better mana sustain and usually better health sustain. For boots, we have Boreal, Statue, or Hadean. Boreal is probably the best choice. High HP sustain and health to fuel the major AD. Hadean, for its credit, is legitimately only slightly worse. It's close enough that if you want to try Ascendancy and you don't have Boreal, 90% of the time you can just slot in Hadean and it'll be fine. Statue, on the other hand, is kind of a sleeper pick, and it's especially good since the nerf, since having lower HP increased the HP sustain of builds using Statue. And funnily enough, I actually made a mistake in some of my recordings. So in some of my recordings, you'll see me using Statue instead of Boreal, which is my main build. For accessories, there's also some nuance here, but my favorite rings are Dormancy because they work with a set, but you can swap for Diamond Solar as well. For bracelets, Shatter Shard, Reverence, and Clockwork are all amazing options. For necklace, you can also go Valediction, especially if you're using Dormancy, but anything with HP and HPR will suffice. Beating Heart, Ashfall, Aberrant Amulet, all good choices here. And I'll link all my daily driver builds in the description so that you can kind of see what I normally use. Obvious reasons. With that out of the way, I intend to showcase two different builds and playstyles here. First, we have the Aeropaladin. The build is as follows. Shattered Aurora, Fidelius, Eden Blessed, Boreal, Double Dormancy, Reverence, and you can also use Clockwork, Valediction. This is pretty bog standard. It's pretty much identical to the meta build, which uses Shatter Shard and often Champion's Valiance. I use this because it's the most comfy to me, to be honest. And before I go on, can I just say I love Eden here. Eden has been languishing in the WFA vault, unused, because it sucks. But Ascendancy can fully utilize its capabilities. MR to reduce BPAC damage, HPR, high HP to increase Sacred Surge damage, and healing efficiency. By the way, with healing efficiency tomes, this build brings Rejuvenating Skin to healing 50% of all damage taken, which is kind of crazy. And if you were paying attention to my DPS demonstration at the beginning of the video, you might have noticed something interesting. I cycle upper charge without Whirlwind Strike, which I of course know is heresy, but you see, Ascendancy is not a tank item. It's WFA, but it has low AHP. Its tree forces it out of the later support nodes, unless you want to lose damage. At most, Ascendancy is a selfish tank. But you cannot play Ascendancy like you played Big Mac Guard. You will die. You cannot face tank things, not for long at least. I'll even do you one further. I'd recommend not playing this ability tree while doing TNA. You will die. Or you have to, I mean, you can live, but you have to jankily fly and crisscross to avoid getting swatted out of the sky. Speaking of the ability tree, it's just Paladin, with Blood Pact and no unnecessary support nodes. You can decide whether you want Provoke or Shine, though. A funny thing about this is I take Second Chance, which I use more than I probably should. Again, it's not a tank build. Don't get hit. This actually makes this build preferable to me in non-TNA content compared to the Bmonk build I'm about to show you because 1, Second Chance, and 2, this build is almost 10% HP positive per second on its mana cycle, factoring in, HPR and Rejuvenating Skin. Isn't that crazy? It feels a lot safer to use than Big Mac, excepting, of course, that your HP is 16k. It can get dicey sometimes, but overall it feels better. And I know that sounds bad, but that's why I have dubbed the Aeropaladin. After activating Second Chance a few too many times in War-Torn Palace, I realized that if you include Charge in the cycle with Aerodynamics, not only does it increase your sustain, Shattered Aurora putting in work there with the -2 cost, but your mobility makes it much harder for you to get hit. Also, Mantles helps this build not collapse under its own weight. Here's what you have to look out for in War-Torn. Nightmares, big spikes, especially when it kind of spreads like a huge area of red circles. And you can see Haru's lovely video, I'll link it in the description, of War-Torn Palace's mechanics. Earth mobs in room 1, like Jesus Christ, what did they feed those guys? They really almost one-shot me every time I do that. And for the moth named after our Holy Lord and Savior, Big E's sword, you have to worry about butterflies, Aerostorm, fireworks, and the corruption spikes. Again, watch Haru's guide for all of this. He goes over it really well, and you can kind of see what to look for. But basically for Anathema, just don't sit still if butterflies are in play. And if Anathema is Aerostorming, you have to react immediately and start circling Anathema, or you will just die. All of these problems have an easy solution. Again, don't get hit. Just try it. Just don't get hit. But if the gameplay hasn't elucidated how I do this too already, I have several modes I play in while piloting this build. I have what I have dubbed DPS mode, which I just look down, I spam uppers, I charge barely off the ground, and I use this when Anathema is not casting spells or for enemies that aren't threats, like TCC. Wave Dash is when I use to kind of just pursue Anathema or wade into hordes of enemies, spamming uppers. Use this when you need to be mobile or enemies are moderate threats, but not too dangerous. It's kind of just, you're looking at the enemy and you're charging every time you land. That's pretty much it. But you're just always moving. The triangle, this is for scary enemies like TNA, Orphan, or when Anathema is casting a spell. What I do is cast charge while looking at the enemy, uppercut, then angle away, looking back to uppercut. It's kind of like, you're kind of just going in like a quarter circle around the enemy is what you're trying to do when you do this. You can also just do a modified wave dash where you just charge past the enemy, turn around, and do it again. It works basically the same. But you're basically just trying to always be on the move without being directly in front of the enemy. You want them always to be turning to try to face you. Utilizing these techniques, you can avoid almost all damage as if you were playing Bmonk. You can even grind in Fort Hegia or the Lighthouse like this with minimal issues that you'll see me use Second Chance in the video, which sucks. But as a note for these two, the way I cycle is literally I just hold down my uppercut macro at all times, and due to the way Wind Tools works, if you press a new macro, it supersedes a macro you're holding down. So I bound upper to left click, so I constantly hold it down and then I press my charge macro every time I land. That's literally it. That's all I do. I just hold left click and press charge macro occasionally. But I imagine many of you are thinking, that's all cool and what, all well and cool, Ren. We know you like tanky builds, but can this do damage? Especially after the nerf. The answer to that, my friend, is yes. This build is not a tank. It is a DPS. the first of its kind that I will be showcasing for you since Axial Lament Rift. I get about 180k island dummy DPS, and in bosses, 300k DPS isn't out of the question with raid buffs. Even if I plat, I often end up raids with at least 30% damage contribution, often 40% or even 50%, though I will admit it's going to look worse. I mean, you can even tell in my footage it's kind of choppy. Unfortunately, my computer kind of sucks, so when I record it, I do way worse than when I don't record. But I promise you, it's better than it looks in my recordings. I'm hoping to get a better computer soon to better rectify that. But I will grant you, even being a DPS by my channel standards, it does not keep up with the ridiculous builds out there, especially like Crafted's. Ascendancy is no cataclysm. Really, it's more of a quality of life weapon than anything else. So by my standards, it's DPS, but by yours, it may not be, you know. I'm also going to be linking Panda's specific, fantastic overview of Paladin in my description, because that video changed how I am viewing the builds I share on my channel. You should check it out. These builds, Big Mac, Aeropaladin, hell, even Fallen Bmonk, they're not going to be the best builds. The best builds for Paladin slot into a team and take support nodes or require reliance on health potions. I mean, there's some exceptions, of course, like especially if you take like crafted Ascendancy, but I think you get my point. The builds I'm showcasing here are solo queue builds that will perform well no matter what team you're on. They're meant to be 100% clear rate, that's what they aspire to, and won't get people foaming at the mouth if you have to solo. That's why I enjoyed Big Mac so much. All my builds will be from this perspective. I basically exclusively play raids solo queue or with one other person since, you know, I'm in the Wynn's retirement home guild. But moving on. For aspects, I use Paladin Aspect. Paladin Aspect has higher DPS to Fallen Aspect if Holy Power is limited. Fallen Aspect is safer though. You need tier 2 Paladin Aspect though for it to be worth it. Uppercut range is another aspect I use. This is not a necessary one and can be replaced. I occasionally replace it with Sparkling Hope. Rejuvenating Skin I also use, but again, this one can also be replaced since it's technically not an upgrade. You will also need Sacred Surge Aspect and Radiance Aspect. The other variant of this build is the Bmonk tree, and there's only really one functional Bmonk tree, which I'll leave in the description, which keeps everything the same. I just swap in statue. It's kind of up to you though. You can swap in Shatter Shard or go Champion's Valiance or whatever. Point is, the Bmonk version is way harder to hit, so you can afford slightly less HP sustain. Funnily enough, the nerf actually made statue kind of usable. Before the nerf, it was super hard to get HPR to heal a high enough percentage of your HP, but with this, it's pretty bog standard. I cycle upper charge. I don't hold down upper on this, or else you will just die. With raid buff, sometimes you can swing it though. I get about 170k DPS on the dummy with this, 220k to 240k when I can just spam it with raid buffs or if I have the mage. I don't really know what else to say except it lets you relive early 2.0 Fallen Bmonk shenanigans by not having to deal with generalist cycles. Ascendancy Palamunk is, in my opinion, the strongest version of Ascendancy. The only reason I don't main it is because full Paladin is just more fun. It lets you have more team support, and having second chance is such a meme. Whirlwind can also just be frustrating sometimes since the hitbox has no downwards vertical size and it constantly pops you up in the air, you know. Now, a couple of tips to fully maximize this spear. Have a high HP offhand, preferably Guardian. Catamaran also works if you want to be aggressive, but basically before rooms or while idling, you can spam your HP down on these offhands to juice up Rejuvenating Skin. Ironically, this works best if you're not using the Rejuvenating aspect. You can also use these offhands to survive Moab by swapping to Ascendancy right before the countdown ends. Use Talisman of the Valley. You don't have to, but in my opinion, it's kind of necessary to fully maximize Ascendancy. The first 10 to 15 seconds of a fight is the most dangerous since Rejuvenating isn't spun up yet. Before boss rooms, you can also do this on room 1. Hold Guardian or any high HP stick, and then use Talisman of the Valley. This will give you virtually immortality for about 16 seconds. I think it's something like a little over 2000 HP a second regeneration when you have it fully spun up. And one more thing, when I play this build, I just make sure, I really only do cycle upper charge. The only other things I do is I War Scream to reset Mantle. I Bash to reset Radiance. You can weave in a Trumpet every now and then, but your Holy Power depletes so fast, it's kind of hard to weave in. So just when you have excess Holy Power, you can Trumpet. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this review of Ascendancy along with the builds included. While I don't upload often, these videos are the accumulation of tons and tons of hours of testing. I did over 50 raids perfecting these builds and tweaking them so they're just right. So anyways, have a good one.